George Santos's campaign finances. Records that his campaign filed with the FEC show 37 expenses that were just 1 penny below the threshold to show receipts.
World-renowned liar George Santos has got caught potentially in another lie.
$199.99. The filing also has several unusual expenses, including exorbitant amounts spent on air travel and hotels, and more than $10,000 in what are listed as rent payments to the company Cleaner 123. The company's address, though, is a house on Long Island where Santos's district is located. Now, Santos is also facing more trouble over his rampant lies. Several of his campaign donors tell CNN they feel betrayed. But it's not just his donors. Voters in his district are also outraged. Some even want him to resign.
Teodora Chufayan voted for Santos and was drawn to his positions on pushing back on COVID-19 measures in schools.
Kids. My child, my choice! My child, my choice!
But the Nassau County mom showed up at a rally this week organized by state Democrats to call on him to resign.
The whole persona that he created and the ability to deceive us is just so troubling. This man should not be allowed to be in office. And we all know it. I want to assure you, the Republicans know it too.
So there's been a recent development about George Santos. Now, we already know that he has just spent his entire campaign lying about who he is and just making up just completely obscene facts and like rewriting his own resume and history, apparently in order to get elected. But it also seems like there potentially could be some campaign finance violations going on as well, because there are a bunch of very suspicious transactions that were just below the threshold of what would require a receipt. But you see, this is being called out with George Santos, but it's also something that just kind of happens a lot with Republican campaigns in general. Like, one of the things you'll notice is that there's a lot of nepotism, there's a lot of like shady spending, and then of course there's just the fact that the rules themselves are very lax. And so this is something that we have seen continuously throughout the United States, where elected officials who are running these campaigns will find ways to funnel money from their campaigns to their friends, or in some cases even to themselves. But with George Santos, it goes above and beyond. Paired with all of the lies that he has been caught in about himself, there's actually a whole push to try and get him to resign, both among Democrats and Republicans. Now, I personally don't think this is going to go anywhere, because I think a lot of Republicans simply do not care if a Republican elected official is lying, especially about their identity. But there are definitely a lot of people who are deeply upset by this who probably won't be voting for George Santos again. So I doubt he's gonna run for re-election. It would be kind of surprising if he did, because the lies were so egregious that even within the US House of Representatives, within the Republican Party, he actually is a bit of a pariah. And it's probably unlikely that he'll get any type of committee seat or anything like that, which is just, on some level, deeply, deeply hilarious. I guess it does show that there are some lies that the Republican Party cares about, at least a little bit, if they get called out publicly. But then there's another layer to the story that's really important, which is a local media organization did actually find out and point out George Santos's lies before the election. It's just that the mainstream media decided to actually cover this now and make it a bigger story now, as opposed to when the story originally broke by a local media outlet. And that just kind of speaks to one of the frustrating things that happens in the press, where they have too much of a desire to cater to Republicans and to uphold the perceived legitimacy of the Republican Party and Republican elected officials and candidates. And so if there's any negative news about a Republican that's like right before the election, very often you'll see news outlets hesitate to cover it. And granted, this happens with Democratic elected officials too, but somehow it seems the media is far more interested in pushing right-wing talking points than pushing left-wing talking points. Like, for example, one of the things you're seeing in a lot of news outlets across the country is about how 2022 actually had a significant decrease in crime rates, while also at the same time having a significant increase in killings by police. Now think about this. We were being told all up to the election that there's a huge crime wave across the country, only for after the end of the year, after the end of the campaign cycle, for them to admit, yeah, crime's actually lower than it has been. And also admitting, yeah, the police are actually killing way more people than they have been as well. Whereas when you go to before the election, especially the few weeks before the election, they talk about the crime wave and they talk about how desperately we need police to keep us safe. And that was also what the right wing was campaigning on. That is what Republicans were fundamentally campaigning on, trying to say that, like, oh, we have to be tough on crime and we need more police. And so this is just another example of media bias, because most of these giant media companies or giant companies, they will have the same interests as any other giant company. And as such, they will push these right-wing talking points, because at the end of the day, giant cable companies that run these news outlets also want the giant tax breaks that other giant companies do. Big surprise. So George Santos is really just a testament to how our media is sort of systematically failing at getting the truth across to people, especially in a timely manner.